The third Ray Harryhausen documentary we're discussing on this program, I'd like to discuss this feature as well, the Harryhausen Chronicles, released in 1998. Written and directed by Richard Schickel, this film, featuring interviews of Harryhausen, obviously Ray, as you would expect, Ray Bradbury as well, George Lucas, and as of the other two documentaries, Harryhausen's work has gone over from his early days prior to the feature films, and then we go to Mighty Joe Young, all the way through to 1981's Clash of the Titans. I thought it might be interesting here to go through Harryhausen's filmography, feature filmography, and I want to look at who else actually conceived of these films. Like, who's credited with writing and directing these films around Harryhausen's creations. Mighty Joe Young was a story by Marion C. Cooper, which was transformed into a screenplay by Ruth Rose and then directed by Ernest B. Schoedsack. If you don't know, that's the classic King Kong team. The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, of course, was based off of The Foghorn, a 1951 story in the Saturday Evening Post by our main man Ray Bradbury. The screenplay is credited to four: Fred Freeberger, Eugene Lurie, Louis Morheim, and Robert Smith. It wound up being directed by Eugene Lurie. Very well, actually, I will say. Then It Came From Beneath the Sea was a screenplay from Hal Smith and George Worthing Yates and directed quite well by Robert Gordon. The Animal World was written and directed by Owen Allen, because of course it is. Earth vs. the Flying Saucers is based on, somewhat, Flying Saucers from Outer Space, a 1953 book by Donald Kehoe, a non-fiction book, and Donald Kehoe is actually a very interesting figure in the history of UFOlogy, in the sense that early on he was a former aviator for the United States Air Force, who tried to make very sensible claims about what the Air Force had been not wanting to talk about. I think later he's considered to have gotten a bit too sensational by the mid-1960s. He's focusing more on a cover-up than the UFO itself. I'm not going to get into it. But the screenplay was written by Kurt Siodmak, we all know him, George Worthing Yates, and Bernard Gordon, though he was credited as Raymond T. Marcus. And of course, the film itself was directed by Fred F. Sears. The story for 20 Million Miles to Earth was devised by Charlotte Knight and Ray Harryhausen, where the screenplay was penned by Bob Williams and Christopher Knopf. The film was directed by Nathan Juran. Obviously, The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad was based off of Sinbad the Sailor from 1001 Nights, and the screenplay itself, however, was written by Kenneth Kolb, and then again directed as 20 Million Miles to Earth had been by Nathan H. Juran. Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift provided the inspiration for The Three Worlds of Gulliver, a screenplay written by Arthur Ross and Jack Sher, and directed. The film was directed by Jack Sher as well. Mysterious Island, obviously based off of the 1874 novel by Jules Verne. The screenplay was penned by John Preble, Daniel B. Ullman, and Crane Wilbur, and then directed as a film by Cy Enfield. Jason and the Argonauts is inspired by the Argonautica, a 3rd century BC text by Apollonius Rhodius. The screenplay itself was written by Beverly Cross and Jan Reed, and the film was directed by John Shaffey. First Men in the Moon was of course based off of H.G. Wells' 1901 novel The First Men in the Moon, a screenplay by Nigel Neal and Jan Reed, and then directed by Nathan Juran. 1966, 1 Million Years BC was obviously based off of the 1 Million BC 1940 film, and the screenplay for this film was by Michael Carreras, and it was directed by Don Chaffee. The Valley of Gwangi had been written by William Bast, Julian Moore, and Willis H. O'Brien, and was ultimately directed by Jim O'Connolly. Obviously, The Golden Voyage of Sinbad was also based on Sinbad the Sailor from 1001 Nights. The story itself was devised by Brian Clemens and Ray Harryhausen. The script was penned by Brian Clemens, and then it was directed by Gordon Hessler. Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger, also based off Sinbad and the Sailor from 1001 Nights, had a story from Ray Harryhausen, turned into a screenplay by Beverly Cross, and directed then by Sam Wanamaker. Clash of the Titans is based off of the mythological figure of Perseus. It was written by Beverly Cross and then directed by Desmond Davis. A stellar documentary. If you're so inclined, do seek it out.